Once upon a time, in a quaint little village, there lived a kind-hearted shoemaker named Mr. Baird. He had once been quite prosperous, crafting beautiful shoes that everyone admired. But as time passed, business became slow, and Mr. Baird found himself growing poorer and poorer. Despite his hard work, he had nothing left but enough leather to make one final pair of shoes. One chilly evening, with a heavy heart, Mr. Baird sat at his workbench, cutting out the pieces for the last pair of shoes he would make. He did his best to be precise, even though he was filled with worry about what the future held. After cutting out the leather, he set the pieces aside, hoping that perhaps, with a bit of luck, he could sell the shoes and find a way to keep his shop open. With his work done, Mr. Baird thanked God for the day's work, said his evening prayers, and went to bed. He had a good conscience and a grateful heart, so he slept soundly, trusting that things would work out. The next morning, Mr. Baird awoke early, feeling hopeful. He went to his workshop to start making the shoes, but to his astonishment, he found the leather pieces already assembled into a beautiful pair of shoes, perfectly stitched and polished. The shoes were even more exquisite than anything he had ever made. Mr. Baird was amazed and wondered who could have done such a marvelous job. He placed the shoes in his shop window, and soon, a wealthy merchant came by, admiring them greatly. The merchant purchased the shoes for a handsome price, which was enough to buy more leather and other supplies for the shoemaker. With renewed hope, Mr. Baird worked hard to make more shoes, but as evening came, he faced the same problem. He had only enough leather for one more pair of shoes. Days turned into weeks, and each morning Mr. Baird found that his work had been miraculously completed. He grew curious about the mysterious helper who was making these wonderful shoes. Determined to find out, Mr. Baird decided to stay awake one night to discover the secret. That evening, Mr. Baird went to bed as usual, but instead of sleeping, he quietly hid in a corner of his workshop. As the clock struck midnight, he saw a sight that filled him with amazement. Tiny, magical elves appeared in his workshop. They danced and sang with joy as they worked on the shoes, stitching, polishing, and making them look perfect. The elves were swift and skilled, their tiny hands moving with incredible speed. They worked until the first light of dawn, then disappeared just as quickly as they had arrived. Mr. Baird was overjoyed and deeply grateful for the help he had received. The next morning, he made a special pair of shoes, not for sale but as a gift, and placed them in his shop with a note of thanks. As soon as the elves arrived that night, they saw the gift and read the note. The elves were delighted to be appreciated and were touched by the shoemaker's kindness. From that night on, they continued to help Mr. Baird, but the shoemaker made sure to leave out small treats and gifts for them in return. The shoemaker's shop flourished, and he became well known for his high-quality shoes. He lived a happy and prosperous life, always remembering the little elves who had turned his fortune around.